the 30 minutes we've been in this room, the national debt has increased by $90 million. It's increasing by a rate of about $180 million per hour, $4 billion per day. Federal spending is about $9.8 billion a day. We borrow a little over 40% of that, 43%. So $4 billion is accumulated today, tomorrow, the day after, and so forth, to the tune of somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.4 trillion. Now, we're so used to all these fantastic numbers. Have you noticed on television, you'll be listening to commentators, whether it's Fox or whoever it is, and they'll get the millions and the billions and the trillions mixed up. Have you noticed that? Because this has become so astounding that we can hardly comprehend it. $1 billion is 1,000 million, and $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. And we won't tell the liberals what comes after trillion. It's quadrillion. 1,000 trillions is a quadrillion. In late 2008, the Hill City Chamber of Commerce invited me to give a speech to their annual dinner. And I'd been bearish on the economy, what was happening with financial markets for some time. And I think all of you probably know Mike Virgio. And you know how chambers of commerce are. They like good news and so forth. And this was the annual dinner. So Mike comes up to me just before the dinner and he says, "John, say something good about the economy." So I did. I thought of a couple of things. It was a few weeks after the collapse of Lehman Brothers, on September 15th that year. And after Lehman collapsed, the markets just cascaded with contagion, and it continued until March of the following year, 2009. By that time, of course, we had a new administration, far to the left of what it had campaigned, far to the left of any administration we had ever seen or ever will see, we hope. But there is some good news, and let me give you some of that good news right up front. First of all, as of this moment, December 10th, 2011, the United States is still the greatest nation on the face of the earth.
Amen.
We have a $15 trillion GDP. It is 20% of the entire world's GDP. We have the most innovative, creative people in the world. We have the most patents. We have companies, whether they're Procter & Gamble or Coca-Cola or Apple Computer, state of the art in every respect. Envy of the world, Boeing, you can name them by the hundreds. So we have this dynamic economic machine. We also have a fabulous tradition, which began with that Tea Party back in Boston and continues to this day, the spirit of it. 1776. In 1776, a very hot July day, John Adams had asked a young lawyer from Virginia named Thomas Jefferson to draft the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration, as we all know, said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that we are endowed by our Creator," which happens to be a word that certain persons don't like to use, "with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we fought a war with the greatest military power in the world, Great Britain." Oddly enough, many of the Brits sympathized with us. One was Edmund Burke, one of the great original conservative thinkers, as many of you know. Another was John Locke, from whom Jefferson took that phrase, life, liberty, and Locke's word was property, and the pursuit of happiness. And Locke, as a matter of fact, built the South Carolina Constitution. 1776, two other great events occurred. One was the publication of an equally revolutionary economic text by the father of modern economics, Adam Smith. And let me read just a few of the most famous words of Adam Smith because they pertain to this day, and they also pertain to why the opposition to our left, to our far left as it turns out, doesn't understand what is wrong with the American economy and how to revive this economy and make it even greater than it is today. You may recognize this quote from Smith. "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard for their own interest. Every individual neither intends to promote the public interest nor knows how much he is promoting it. He intends only for his own gain, and he is in this, in as many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of his intention. We have all different types of occupations and professions in this room. All kinds of them within our families. Doctors and teachers and farmers and everyone. And each of them, he and she, are working to their individual gain, to do the best that they possibly can, to earn money for their families, to pass a little bit on to their descendants, and in the process of this, creating wealth on a scale the world has never known. Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, right up to the present day, Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates, and everybody, all of us are contributing to this common goal. It is the invisible hand. We try to do the best we can, don't we? Right? And in the process, we create this enormous wealth which creates enormous freedom. Yesterday I was out at Douglas High School. The economics teacher out there, a very nice fellow named Pepper, Dale Pepper, who's also the cross-country coach, if any of you know Dale, invited me 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he said, "My students are confused about the economy." And I said, "Well, don't worry, Dale, all of Europe is confused about the economy as well, and increasingly most Americans." But I used an example of a company, and I talked about the big panics we've had in the United States history, because I'm writing a book about financial crises in American history, beginning with 1837 and coming right to the present time. Also writing a book about the history of the Republican Party. But one of the greatest and deepest and longest panics was that of 1837. Martin Van Buren was president. We all remember Martin Van Buren, right? Very few people do. But Martin Van Buren, by the way, was the first president born in the United States of America. All of his predecessors were born under British rule before we became the United States of America. But in 1837, there was a candle maker named William. There was another soap maker named James. And they were married to sisters. And the father-in-law of these 2 young gentlemen said, "You know, boys, you're in the same business. You should kind of get together, form a company." So they did. And they started with $7,000. William's last name was Proctor, and James's last name was Gamble. And today, that little $7,000 company, founded during the Great Panic of 1837, has over 200,000 employees. It has $82 billion worth of revenues, and it's creating new products, everything from toothpaste to diapers to pharmaceuticals to everything. Now, William Proctor and James Gamble didn't intend to create a giant that would do business in virtually every country in the world. But by doing what they did, and thousands and millions of others who came after them, little business and big businesses created this Goliath, this great American economy. Another thing happened in 1776, publication by Edward Gibbon, and the publication was The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. It took him years to write this book, and the first volume came out in 1776. Believe it or not, for a 6-volume history, I think there's 6 volumes, I've read 2 or 3 of them, I'm rereading parts of them now. It was a bestseller, because the Brits had an empire of their own at that time, and they wanted to know how empires rose and fell. There were a number of conclusions by Gibbon. We won't go through them all today because it was a few centuries ago that Rome finally fell. But one was the corruption of the elites. And when you take a look throughout world history, and Thucydides wrote the same thing about the decline of Athens in the 5th century BC. It's usually the corrupt elites and bad leadership that results in nations or empires falling. Declaration of Independence, the wealth of nations, and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. One of the things we conservatives believe is that history makes a difference, and we can learn things from history, because the whole root of conservatism is to conserve.